My boss looked at me across the mahogany conference table and said words I'll never forget. "Natalie, your idea isn't yours. It's the company's." 6 months later, they raised $10 million using my algorithm. I was working in a garage. 5 years later, I became their only investor and took their company away in a single meeting. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Natalie Chen, and I'm 29 years old. I grew up in foster care in Sacramento, bouncing between 7 different homes before I aged out of the system at 18. I had nothing except a laptop I bought with money from my part-time job at a diner and an acceptance letter to Stanford University with a full scholarship. Computer science was my escape. While other kids played outside, I taught myself to code. By 16, I was building websites for local businesses. By 20, I was one of the top students in Stanford's artificial intelligence program. I specialized in natural language processing and machine learning, particularly in emotion recognition technology. After graduation in 2016, I joined a startup called Synth AI Technologies in San Francisco. The company had 20 employees, a small office in Soma, and big dreams. Richard Blake, the CEO, was a charismatic 40-year-old who had sold his previous company for $80 million. Marcus Webb, the CTO, was my mentor, a brilliant engineer who had worked at Google and Facebook. Jessica Hartman, the COO, was cold and calculating but undeniably effective. I was hired as a senior machine learning engineer. My salary was $90,000 a year, which felt like a fortune for someone who had slept on couches just a few years earlier. For the first year, I worked on improving their existing products: chatbots for customer service, sentiment analysis tools for marketing companies. The work was interesting but not groundbreaking. I was restless. I wanted to create something that mattered. Then, in late 2017, I had an idea. I was reading research papers on emotion recognition one night in my tiny apartment in the Mission District. Most AI systems could identify basic emotions like happy, sad, or angry, but human emotion is far more complex than that. What about guilt, shame, hope, nostalgia, the subtle mix of feelings we experience every moment? I wondered, what if we could build an AI that understood emotional nuance the way humans do? I started working on it in my spare time. Every evening after work, every weekend, I coded. I called it EmotionCore. The algorithm used a combination of natural language processing, voice tone analysis, and contextual understanding to identify not just what emotion someone was expressing, but the layers beneath it. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source: my own trauma. Growing up in foster care, I learned to read people's emotions for survival. You had to know when a foster parent was about to snap, when another kid was planning something, when a social worker was lying. I built that intuition into my algorithm. After 6 months of development, I had a working prototype. The accuracy was stunning: 97% in identifying complex emotional states, compared to 60% for the best existing systems. I was terrified and excited. This could change everything: mental health treatment, customer service, education, therapy. The applications were endless. In March 2018, I decided to show it to Richard and Marcus. I requested a meeting and presented my work. "This is incredible, Natalie," Marcus said, leaning forward in his chair. His eyes gleamed with something I couldn't quite identify at the time. Later, I would recognize it as greed. Richard nodded slowly. "How far along is this?" "The core algorithm is complete," I said. "I've tested it on 10,000 conversation samples. The accuracy is higher than anything on the market. We could integrate it into our existing products, or build something entirely new around it." "And you built this yourself?" Jessica asked sharply. "Using company resources?" "I built it at home, on my own time," I said. "But I used some of the training data from our servers. I thought it would be good for the company." Richard and Marcus exchanged a glance. "Natalie, this is phenomenal work," Richard said with his practiced smile. "But there's something you need to understand. When you signed your employment contract, you agreed that any work related to our business belongs to Synth AI. That includes this algorithm." My stomach dropped. "I built this on my own time." "With our data," Jessica added. "And it's directly related to our core business. Legally, this is company property." "But I started. "We're going to file for the patent under Synth AI's name," Richard interrupted. You'll be listed as an inventor, of course. You'll get a bonus. We'll discuss equity options. This is going to make all of us wealthy, Natalie. You should be happy. I wasn't happy. I was devastated. But what could I do? I had no money for lawyers. I had no leverage. I had signed that contract without reading it carefully, desperate for the job. I want to be part of the development, I said quietly. I want to lead the team that builds this into a product. Of course, Marcus said warmly, putting his hand on my shoulder. You're the architect of this technology. We need you. That should have been my first warning sign. The warmth felt false. Over the next 3 months, everything changed. Richard hired 2 new engineers, both men with impressive resumes. Suddenly, I wasn't leading the EmotionCore development anymore. I was collaborating. The new engineers, David and James, barely acknowledged my expertise. In meetings, they talked over me. When I pointed out problems in their code, they dismissed my concerns. Marcus, who I thought was my advocate, stayed silent. Just be patient, he told me privately. They're adjusting. Give them time. But time made things worse. I noticed my access to certain parts of the code base was restricted. Documentation I had written was being rewritten without my input. In the patent application that was being prepared, my name was listed last among 5 inventors, even though I had built the core algorithm alone. I tried to talk to Richard. He was always too busy. I tried to talk to Jessica. She said I was being overly emotional and needed to be a team player. In June 2018, everything collapsed. I was called into a meeting with Richard, Marcus, and Jessica. HR was there too. Natalie, we need to talk about your performance, Richard began. My performance? I had been working 70-hour weeks. You've been difficult to work with, Jessica said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. Multiple team members have complained about your attitude. You're not collaborating effectively. That's not true, I said, my voice shaking. I built EmotionCore. I've been trying to help, but nobody listens to me. EmotionCore is a team effort now, Marcus said, not meeting my eyes. We appreciate your initial work, but the technology has evolved beyond your original contribution. I stared at him. My mentor, the man who had encouraged me, who I had trusted. We're letting you go, Richard said flatly. We'll give you 3-month severance, but you need to sign this NDA and non-compete agreement. The NDA was 40 pages long. It prevented me from talking about any technology I had worked on at SynthAI for 5 years. The non-compete barred me from working in emotion recognition AI for 3 years. If I don't sign, I asked. Then you get nothing, Jessica said coldly, and we'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I had $4,000 in my bank account. My rent was $2,000 a month. I was alone in a city where I knew almost nobody outside of work. I signed. I walked out of that building with my severance check and a cardboard box containing my desk belongings. I stood on the sidewalk in the San Francisco sunshine and cried for the first time in years. That night, I made 2 decisions. First, I would survive. Second, I would make. The next 6 months were the darkest of my life. My severance ran out quickly. I moved from my apartment to a tiny studio in Oakland that cost $900 a month. I took freelance coding jobs, barely making enough to eat. I watched, from afar, as SynthAI announced their revolutionary new product in September 2018, EmotionCore 1.0, the press release. Featured quotes from Richard and Marcus. My name was mentioned once, in small print at the bottom, as contributing engineer. In December 2018, SynthAI announced they had raised $12 million in Series A funding. TechCrunch called EmotionCore the future of emotional AI. Richard was interviewed on podcasts. Marcus gave talks at conferences. I was eating ramen noodles and wondering how I would pay my electricity bill. But I wasn't idle. Every night after finishing my freelance work, I coded. I had something they didn't know about, a complete backup of my original EmotionCore development stored on my personal GitHub account in a private repository. Every iteration, every experiment, every line of code, all time-stamped. More than that, I had kept everything, every email I had sent, every Slack message, every draft document, screenshots of my work, lab notebooks. I had documentation proving that I had developed the core algorithm alone, before anyone else at SynthAI had even seen it. I also had something more valuable than revenge. A better idea. EmotionCore had a fundamental flaw that I had noticed, but never had the chance to fix. It was accurate, but it didn't understand context deeply enough. It could tell you someone was sad, but not why. It could identify anger, but not the source. I started building something new. I called it Empathy AI. Instead of just recognizing emotions, Empathy AI understood emotional context. It could follow a conversation and understand how feelings evolved. It could identify trauma responses, detect genuine versus performative emotion, and even predict emotional reactions. Most importantly, I built it with ethics at the core. Privacy protection, consent mechanisms, transparent decision-making. I worked in the corner of a friend's garage. My friend Alex had been my roommate at Stanford and now worked as a product manager at a healthcare startup. He believed in me when nobody else did. "You're building something special," he said one night as I debugged code at 2 a.m. "Don't give up." I didn't. In February 2019, I had a working prototype of Empathy AI. It was better than EmotionCore in every measurable way, but I had no money to market it, no connections to investors, and a non-compete agreement that technically barred me from the industry. I made a risky decision. I reached out to small mental health startups that couldn't afford SynthAI's expensive EmotionCore license. I offered Empathy AI for free in exchange for feedback and case studies. The first company was a suicide prevention hotline that needed better tools to help their counselors. Empathy AI helped them identify callers in severe distress with 99% accuracy. They prevented 3 suicides in the first month using the system. Word spread quickly in the mental health tech community. By May 2019, 15 organizations were using Empathy AI. They were telling everyone about it. SynthAI sent me a cease and desist letter in June. I responded with a 40-page document from my lawyer, a young attorney, named Sarah, who took my case pro bono because she believed in it, explaining that Empathy AI used completely different architecture and methodology than EmotionCore. The non-compete was questionable anyway since SynthAI had fired me. They backed down. They were too busy growing to fight a legal battle they might lose. By August 2019, I officially incorporated my company, MindBridge AI. Alex quit his job to join me as co-founder and COO. We hired our first employee, a brilliant designer named Priya, who had been laid off from a big tech company. We worked 16-hour days in that garage. We lived on savings and credit cards. We believed we were building something that mattered. Then COVID-19 hit in early 2020. The pandemic was devastating for the world, but it created an unexpected opportunity for mental health technology. Suddenly everyone was doing therapy online. Telehealth platforms were overwhelmed. Depression and anxiety rates skyrocketed. Empathy AI was perfectly positioned. We helped therapists understand their clients better through video sessions. We helped crisis hotlines manage surging call volumes. We helped schools identify students who were struggling. By June 2020, we had 200 clients. By December, we had 2,000. Revenue was growing at 20% month over month. In January 2021, we closed our first real funding round, $5 million led by a healthcare-focused VC firm. I owned 60% of the company. At 28 years old, I was a millionaire on paper. But money wasn't the goal anymore. Purpose was. We expanded the team to 20 people. We opened a real office in San Francisco, ironically just 2 blocks from SynthAI's headquarters. We started getting attention from major healthcare systems and Fortune 500 companies. In March 2022, Sequoia Capital led our Series A, $25 million at a $125 million valuation. TechCrunch wrote a feature article about us. I was invited to speak at conferences. I started seeing Richard, Marcus, and Jessica at industry events. They pretended not to know me. I pretended the same, but I was watching them. SynthAI was growing too, but they were having problems. Customer complaints about privacy violations. Reports of biased algorithms. A lawsuit from a mental health organization claiming EmotionCore had failed to identify a patient's suicidal ideation, resulting in a death. Their Series B funding round in late 2022 was disappointing. They raised only $8 million at a down valuation. Investors were losing confidence. In December 2022, news leaked that Richard was desperately seeking a buyer or new investors. The company was burning cash and running out of runway. I saw my opportunity. In January 2023, I made a call to a friend who worked in venture capital. "I need you to do something for me," I said, "and it needs to be completely confidential." I explained my plan. He was shocked, then impressed, then eager to help. Through his firm, we set up a shell company, an anonymous investor interested in AI companies looking for acquisition opportunities. We reached out to Synth AI's board with an expression of interest. Richard took the meeting immediately. He was drowning and needed a life raft. My friend represented our unnamed investor in the initial discussions. We got access to all of Synth AI's financials, customer data, and legal documents. What I saw was worse than I imagined. They were 3 months from insolvency. Employee morale was terrible. Their technology was stagnating because their best engineers had left, but they still had one valuable asset, the EmotionCore, patent and customer base. "Our investor is prepared to make a serious offer," my friend told Richard in March 2023. "But they want to meet you personally. They want to understand the vision." Richard agreed immediately. We scheduled the meeting for April 15, 2023, at 2 p.m. in Synth AI's conference room, the same room where they had fired me 5 years earlier. I dressed carefully that morning. A sharp black suit, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. I looked like the successful CEO I had become, not the desperate 24-year-old girl they had discarded. I arrived at their office building at 1:55 p.m. The receptionist didn't recognize me. "I'm here for the 2 o'clock with Richard Blake," I said calmly. "Your name?" "Natalie Chen." She checked her list, looking confused. "I don't see you listed. The meeting is with— Tell Richard that Natalie Chen is here. He'll want to see me." She made the call. I watched her face change as someone on the other end spoke urgently. He says to send you up immediately." I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Their office was bigger now, more polished, but I could see the cracks. Cheap furniture, faded paint, the desperate energy of a failing startup. Richard was waiting in the hallway. His face was ashen. "Natalie, why are you— "I'm the anonymous investor," I said simply. "Shall we go to the conference room?" Marcus and Jessica were already there. Marcus looked like he might vomit. Jessica's face was stone. I sat down at the head of the table, the same seat Richard had sat in when he fired me. I opened my laptop and connected it to their screen. "Let me be clear about why I'm here," I began. 5 years ago, you stole my work. You fired me. You tried to destroy my career. Today, I'm offering to buy your company for $47 million. Richard found his voice. You can't be serious. You're doing this for revenge?" "I'm doing this for justice," I corrected. "And because your company is worth less than nothing without my original algorithm. Your EmotionCore is built on my work. The patent should be mine. And I can prove it." I showed them everything. The GitHub repository with thousands of commits, all time-stamped before I even started working at Synth AI. Email chains where I discussed the algorithm with Alex. Draft papers I had written. Lab notebooks with my handwriting. "You filed the patent in March 2018, I continued. "I started developing EmotionCore in August 2017, 7 months before I ever showed it to you. I have documentation proving every step of my development process. If I take this to court, I will win. The patent will be invalidated. Every license you've sold will be void. Your company will be destroyed." "You signed an NDA?" Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. "NDAs don't protect stolen intellectual property," I replied. "My lawyers have already prepared the lawsuit. We can file it tomorrow, or you can accept my offer today." $47 million is insulting," Richard said, trying to sound tough. This company is worth nothing," I interrupted. "You're 3 months from bankruptcy. Your last valuation was $60 million, but that was before the lawsuit and the negative press. I'm offering you $47 million in cash. Today. It's more than you deserve and more than you'll get anywhere else." The room was silent. "There are conditions," I continued. "First, the patent rights to EmotionCore transfer to me personally. Second, Richard, Marcus, and Jessica resign immediately with no severance beyond what's contractually required. Third, you issue a public statement acknowledging my role as the original creator of the core technology." "You're humiliating us," Marcus whispered. It was the first time he had spoken. I looked at him. My former mentor, the man who had betrayed me. You humiliated me, I said quietly. You made me feel worthless. You stole my work and tried to erase me. This isn't humiliation. This is accountability. And if we refuse, Richard asked, then I file the lawsuit tomorrow. I have $40 million in funding and the best IP lawyers in Silicon Valley. You have debt and desperation. How do you think that will go? Jessica stood up abruptly. I need to talk to our board. You have until 5 p.m. today, I said. After that, the offer expires and the lawsuit begins. They accepted at 4:47 p.m. The paperwork took 6 weeks to finalize. By June 2023, Synth AI Technologies was officially absorbed into MindBridge AI. I now controlled both the EmotionCore patent and my superior empathy AI technology. The story broke in TechCrunch on June 15th. MindBridge AI acquires former employer in stunning reversal. The article detailed the patent theft, my firing, and my comeback. Within hours, it was the top story on Hacker News and spreading across social media. Richard, Marcus, and Jessica disappeared from the tech scene. Richard moved to Florida and started a consulting business that failed within a year. Marcus took a job at a mid-tier company in Seattle at half his previous salary. Jessica sent me an email 3 months after the acquisition. I'm sorry, it read. What we did was wrong. I was scared of speaking up. I was wrong to stay silent. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. I never responded. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. By September 2023, MindBridge AI was valued at $320 million. We had merged the best parts of EmotionCore with Empathy AI to create the most advanced emotional intelligence platform in the world. We had partnerships with major healthcare systems, schools, and corporations. In November, I was named to Forbes 30 Under 30. The profile opened with the story of the patent theft and my comeback. The tech industry loves a good underdog story, but this was more than that. It was a story about justice. In December, I gave a TED Talk titled, How I Turned Betrayal into Innovation. 20 million views in the first month. Comments poured in from people who had been stolen from, fired unfairly, or told they weren't good enough. You showed us that winning isn't about revenge, one comment said. It's about being so good they can't ignore you anymore. That comment made me cry. Because it was true. It's now April 2026 and I'm 32 years old. MindBridge AI went public last year at a valuation of $1.2 billion. I still own 38% of the company, making me one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in technology. But the money isn't what matters most. What matters is the impact. Our technology is used in suicide prevention hotlines, therapy sessions, educational settings, and healthcare systems across 40 countries. We've helped identify over 10,000 people in mental health crises and connected them with help. We've made therapy more accessible and effective for millions of people. I think about that scared 24-year-old girl standing on the sidewalk with a cardboard box, crying. I wish I could tell her that everything would be okay, better than okay, that the betrayal would become her fuel, that the injustice would become her purpose. Last week, I received an email from Richard. The subject line was, "Congratulations." I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. Natalie, it read. I saw your company went public. I won't pretend I'm happy about how things turned out for me, but I want you to know I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, what we did. It was wrong. We were wrong. You built something incredible, and we tried to take it from you. I'm glad we failed. Congratulations on your success. You earned it. Richard? I stared at that email for a long time. Then I hit delete, not out of anger, but because I didn't need his validation anymore. I didn't need his apology. I had already won, not by destroying him, but by building something better than he ever could. I learned something important through all of this. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. It's taking everything they tried to steal from you and making it even better. It's proving that their betrayal didn't break you. It made you stronger. Today, MindBridge AI has 400 employees. We're profitable. We're growing. We're changing lives. And every single person who works here knows my story. They know that this company was built on principles of fairness, ethics, and giving credit where it's due. I make sure our employee contracts explicitly state that any work done on personal time with personal resources belongs to the employee. I make sure our patent applications list inventors honestly. I make sure nobody's contribution gets erased, because I remember what it feels like to be erased. And I'll spend the rest of my career making sure it never happens to anyone on my team. Sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in my office, I think about that conference room meeting 5 years ago. How small I felt. How powerless, how certain I was that my career was over. But I also think about walking back into that same room as the CEO who was about to buy their company. How I sat in Richard's chair. How I proved, with documentation and data and undeniable truth, that they had stolen from me. That moment wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about proving that truth matters, that merit matters, that you can't steal someone's work and get away with it forever. And that the girl from foster care, the one with nothing but a laptop and a dream, could build something that changed the world. That's the story I want people to remember. Not the theft, not the betrayal, but the comeback, the innovation, the justice. Because in the end, that's what really matters. Not bringing others down, but building yourself up. Not destroying your enemies, but creating something so powerful, so meaningful, so undeniably yours that nobody can ever take it away again. I built MindBridge AI from nothing, from a garage, from heartbreak, from determination, and nobody can ever steal that from me.